So today's guest, Derek George, really, really nice guy. We had to push back because there was, someone close to him who actually helped get him here to Nashville who passed away. So I'm so glad that he was able to take the time to come sit down with us, because I know that's not the easiest thing, especially when it's somebody who has such a monumental, pivotal influence on why he's here in Nashville. But what you're going to hear today is just a lot of ambition. And that's what I say about him. He wants to kind of do everything, but not in a half-ass way. Like, he wants to really tackle on pieces of the music industry and do it at a full capacity. And I have a huge appreciation for that. And he has an immense amount of awareness too. And we talk about the fact that he's a producer now and not just a songwriter, and he will absolutely turn down jobs because he said, I'm not the right fit, and it's very easy to accept a job because that's a paycheck. And the fact that he turns them down because potentially he's not the right fit for something was an incredible, again, amount of awareness that he had that I really, really appreciated. He's also been, another guest that has talked so highly of Lainey Wilson. And I don't think I've ever heard one person say something negative about this girl, and that is such a true testament of the artist and person and songwriter that Lainey is, and that why she is the real deal, that she's able to craft things and how wonderful she is to work with. So that was something that I loved hearing just over and over again, because Lainey is experiencing probably like such a skyrocketing moment in her career right now. So the more positive things you hear about someone like that, absolutely the better. When he started talking about when he writes songs or when he produces, that we should basically try to make everything a hit song, I didn't know what he quite meant by that at first, but now I totally understand that we shouldn't treat any song as if it's less important. You go in with the full potential of something, because you never know what's going to end up being a hit. So I love the fact that he says, if you're going to go in and produce a song, you're going to you should treat it as if it's going to be a hit song. And that's how you're going to make better music. I think that if we did that probably more often, that we would have better music. So I really, really appreciate that stance that he takes on that. He also said something really interesting about an emotional grab for music today. And it totally makes sense that we live in a scrolling world, and if we don't have a compelling 10 seconds that grabs us immediately, that we live in a world where we're just going to keep scrolling and say goodbye to it. And he's very much right that we are in a moment in time with music that I think we are focusing a lot on that emotional grab, and the songs are actually becoming hits. The ones that, like I say all the time, that the lack of substance in songs that's being written is crazy. However, the ones that are actually making it and becoming hits, if you really look at it, are the ones that grab you emotionally and lyrically, and there's not a build up in the song. It kind of has to jump off right off the gate, because we live in a very scrolling day where if it doesn't grab you right then, next. And that's where we're at right now in music. And I never even thought about that until he actually said that to me today. The one thing that he said to me also that multiple guests have said now is this camp-based feeling in songwriting, and that it's something that he wishes would change. He's not the first person to say this. And when we mean by camp-based, it's like it feels, I guess, cliquey in a sense, and it's very, very hard for a new songwriter to come to town, or even an artist for that matter, because I can speak based on my own opinions, that it feels like it's hard to find a home somewhere because everything is kind of very campy, very cliquey. And how he said it just wasn't like that in the 90s. And I've heard this time and time again. And most songwriters now that I sit down and talk to all agree that they wish it was less like that. So I do think in this episode, he gives a lot of food for thought, especially for people who are coming to town or someone who's here that's new. I think he says a lot of things in here that if you're in this business, he says some things that you can really, really learn from. So I hope that if you're somebody that wants to be a songwriter or is a songwriter or wants to be here, that this is an episode for you, I think, because I think he says a lot of things that you're absolutely going to want to take note of. And overall, I thought it was an incredible interview, and he's a really great guy. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much, Derek George, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Doing wonderful. It's been a good morning.
What would you say is the most impactful thing that's happened to you over the last month?
Over the last month, I lost my first manager who brought me to town when I was 18 and right out of high school, and so he passed away just recently. He was a great kind of a giant in the industry at the time. He managed Alan Jackson and worked with Glenn Campbell for years, and he kind of put me on the path working with Brian White, another artist friend of mine that we worked together for a long time. He managed Brian as well, and he was just a great man. His name was Marty Gamlin, and great in the publishing industry and management industry. Just an all-around good human being too, great soul.
Well, first of all, I'm really sorry for your loss.
Well, thank you very much.
But how about we take a moment for you can maybe share like your favorite memory?
My favorite memory of Marty. Well, Marty kind of came up in the he all through the 70s and 80s, like he was in the music industry, and so we would go to LA to do, back then they used to do the ACMs out there in LA. We'd go out there and he would take us, sometimes we would go, he would show us all the old haunts of all the 70s guys and show us the old gyms, where Vince Gironda, the guy who like trained all the actors, and Lou Ferrigno and all those guys. He was a big, he lived out there in LA for a while, and those are some of my fondest memories, just taking on the road trips with him and him coming out on the road, and he'll go, oh, we got to go over here and see this. We were in Lake Tahoe one time, and he goes, let's go run a boat and just drive around Lake Tahoe. He's just a good man, but going to dinner with Jimmy Webb, big songwriter who wrote lots of Glenn Campbell hits. He was always just such a generous man with his time, and always broadening his circle, your circle, with his friends, and very generous with that. So, which sometimes those are hard to come by, especially today. Very hard. Not an insecure personality, not worried about anybody stealing his thunder. He never wanted fame or any of that. It was all about doing what was best for his artist and his creatives that he worked with.
And how did he get you here?
Well, actually, we have a big county fair where I'm from in Philadelphia, Mississippi, and it's kind of a unique deal where all the cabins, they build these cabins on the fairgrounds, and people live there for a week. They shut the whole town down, and all the mail and businesses run out of the fairgrounds for a week. And he's from Philadelphia as well, and he had a cabin there, and I was just playing acoustic guitar and singing cover songs next to him, and he heard me one night, and him and his wife said, you need to come to Nashville, and that's kind of what started it all off. And then I joined a group that was from that area called Pearl River, and we got a record deal my senior year of high school and moved up here, all of us.
Senior year?
Yeah.
That's pretty young.
It was fun. Oh, yeah, I was young, but I kind of knew what I wanted to do from the time I was 14. So.
Well, yeah, no, I had actually read or heard actually in an interview with you that you actually at the age of like 5 or 6, you kind of knew exactly what you wanted to do.
My mom would just play music around the house. My mom's has no musical. As far as I know, I'm the only one in my family who's ever done music, but she would just play the Doors and Tom Jones records and these things around in the house, and Kenny Rogers, and I just fell in love with music at a very, very young age. But I knew that I was very interested in music, but I didn't really take it seriously till I was about 14.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I think we never know exactly at like the age of 5 or 6. I say 5 or 6 too for me when I heard Celine Dion for the first time.
Oh yeah.
And so what I had heard that you said was that your first album that you had purchased, a Kiss album, and hearing the guitar.
Yep, I heard it was Ace Frehley. I guess would have been the first go. That's what I want to do for a living. Whatever that sound is.
Whatever that is.
I want to do that for a living, and I don't think I was tunnel vision from that moment on and never really turned back.
What was it about it, you think?
I don't know. I mean, part of it with Kiss was the drama, and you got all this theatrics and all that. And I think that was larger than life, and especially in a time in the 70s. I think that would have probably been around 78 or something when that album came out. And I'd saved money cutting grass or doing something and got that record, and I just wore it out. I didn't even have a proper, my mom, we had like a big console stereo system, but I had a little small Batman record player, and I would just sit in my room for hours and listen to that whole album backwards and forwards. And the guy, I remember it was Bob Ezrin that produced that record, and I remember it just took me on a journey that I don't think I've ever ever got off of, thank God.
What's funny is like yours was Kiss, mine was Britney Spears. I'm kind of glad that neither of us turned into Kiss or Britney Spears, but I think that makes sense.
Yes.
Makes you fall in love with something.
Yeah.
So with you having so much rock influence, which I find very interesting, what was it that created such a passion for country music?
Well, I think I was I had some opportunities when I was my senior year to go to college and do all this. I was a smart kid. I really enjoyed school and studying and still to this day, it's I read a lot and enjoy learning. But I think my mom and my dad were both like, son, there's doors opening up for you that we can't open again. And I'd grown up playing in garage bands, rock bands, and that kind of stuff. But I began to see then that what I was really gravitating towards in that kind of music, I mean, outside of the glam 80s music, it became, I was really reverting back to like the classic rock, where it was based on songs and riffs and just hit sounding records. And I began to realize I had two options. I was either going to move to LA and try to struggle out there and just hopefully I got discovered, or either I had an opportunity that was right there at my hands and it was still doing what I wanted to do. And I was beginning to really get into singer-songwriters at that time, like Mac McAnally and James Taylor and all that. They were really I was starting to see the weight of the songs really was a part of the power that was drawing me to it, not just the records.
What made you want to start to be an artist, which I find interesting because obviously that's not what you do now and it wasn't what you ended up choosing later on. What was it that drew you to an artist's life?
I think some of the I mean, most kids, you have your pipe dreams, your thoughts of and I think a lot of that was shaped by that the Kiss element of it, the kind of pageantry of it and the theatrics of it. And you go, yeah, I want to be rich and famous and I want to play in front of thousands and thousands of people and make music. And then as I began to do that, I toured for, from the time I was 18 till probably 28.
Wow.
And we played like I said, we got our share of beer spilt on us. We played those Texas dance hall clubs and we played 5 nights a week. We did the 5-hour sets of nobody watching, just your human jukebox where they're just dancing. And I began to realize that even as, started getting out there on major tours and playing, that I was falling in love with the production and the creative side of it more than the actual being out and playing. And that was what was really calling me. And I was having a couple of other producers at the time, big producers, Brian White's producer, Kyle Lenning, who's another great mentor of mine. And they were really, I think they saw that I had that bug in me and they really cultivated it in me and like taught me, well, this is why you use these pieces of gear. And then I got enamored with all of it. Like it's all the gear is like, it's the seasoning of the soup and you use those things to kind of help differentiate in the course of the production, what makes it unique and what makes it, you can use those tools as creative tools, and that was beginning to really be what was drawing me the most. And so I thought, first of all, I just want to be a great guitar player and play in front of 1,000 people. Then it became, no, I think I want to be a producer. But I also saw at that time in that high point of country music in the 90s was when all this was going on, and all the labels had producers as record heads, and I saw that that was a career trajectory that I really wanted to be on. I saw that those guys in the end really called the shots. What songs got recorded, what, casting of the bands, and really helping the artists to kind of hone into what was unique about them. Yeah. And that was very intriguing to me, what I really wanted to get into.
So you ultimately have wanted to be a label, like a head of a label?
Well, I wanted to make music creatively, but I saw that those guys had the power to control what the creative product was going to be in the end. And we've lost that now in Nashville.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have that. I think Scott Hendricks was maybe the last producer label head we've had, and he's no longer and that's a sad thing because we have a lot of large organizations with a lot of capital that can help these artists, but you don't have anybody there that knows how the sauce is made.
That was just about to say. I was like, so do you think that has, made us have less substance in our music?
I do. I'd be lying if I didn't. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think what happened was you had exorbitant budgets in the 90s because lots of money was being made, but then there was lots of money being lost too on acts that didn't work. And I think it was kind of a knee-jerk reaction for for the bean counters at the tops of the labels to go, hey, we've got to cut back on some of this. And producers, especially at that time, had become very comfortable with a certain amount of budget to make a record that would, and to make it efficiently, but also at the same time to go, I need all these guys, this team of guys around me to help me make a record. 'Cause making a record is difficult. There's a lot of thought and a lot of busy work that has to get done. That if you're a producer and you're having to do all that busy work, which is the way it works now, you don't get to farm some of those things out that you could back in the day. And I think a lot of the music suffers from a little bit of incestuousness that we have going on now, because there's one-dimensional productions. Because I mean, if I'm just left to do my own demise, I'm going to do what I feel like is innately good. But I think music is meant to be commercial, and I always benefit from the ideas of the players and the other engineers that are around me, and the mix engineers. All that whole process, I think, made the music better.
Absolutely.
Sonically and creatively.
Well, what's funny about that, and I've talked about this on the show, is that it feels like we're swinging back a bit, because the country music consumer is actually begging for it.
Yeah.
And I try not to live in the comment section of things, but I like to, because it educates myself. Like, I'll go to a CMA post, right? And they'll post somebody, and then you'll go into the comments, and people are really trying to express, like, this is what we want, not this. And I think there was a moment where it was popular, where things were changing, and now it's swinging back to what feels like more of the 90s. And this is what people are asking for, substance. And not only just in the production, but lyrically. We've lost a lot of the storytelling in songwriting.
Oh, yeah.
And that has been something that I've noticed, and because I know what brought me to Nashville and the songs that I love, and I don't see it as much anymore. But it's interesting because the fans are actually begging for it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that's why you've seen, I mean, with Chris Stapleton, you've seen such a great career launch with him. I mean, in the sense of that anybody that's been in Nashville for 20 minutes knew Chris Stapleton for years before he was successful as a solo artist. And I mean, and Chris was writing brilliant, great songs then, but I think the industry was really starved for something that just felt authentic and real, and especially coming off the bro country era. And I contributed to the bro country era. I have songs that were hits in that time period. And you, as a songwriter, you have to learn to write for those the market demands it. And you go, well, these guys are paying me money to write commercial songs that they can go exploit, and you do that. But we definitely feel, I could feel it in the audience, that even that night that Chris played on the CMAs, we're just starved for something that's authentic and great, and he fit the bill for all those things. So.
Well, another person that I think, then I know you've worked with, is Lainey Wilson. So I think she's somebody that is standing above all other females right now, because she's the only one really offering that. I think Ella Langley's doing a lot of that, but Lainey is somebody that is really, like, people will go like, well, how come she just, came out of nowhere? I'm like, well, first of all, she didn't come out of nowhere, but I get it commercially, you're seeing that, but it's because it's what people are asking for. And what is that like, working with her and writing with her?
Lainey's, she's the same. Even we just went on a bus trip with her just a few months back, and she's exactly the same as she was the first day she came into my studio. She sits down and she knows who she is. She knows her brand. She is a real artist in that sense. And even if we have something kind of, an idea or half a chorus written or whatever, she knows how to bend it to her brand, and knows how she is the commodity. She knows it, and she knows what her fans wants to hear, and she knows how to get there. And even if she's going, well, I think that's the right idea, but I think it needs to be spun this way, she really understands who she's singing to, and she's about building a career, about building hard tickets, and she knows that sometimes that hit songs don't always build hard tickets, and she understands that I need to whatever I put out, it needs to feel real and authentic to these people, because they're buying into my brand, and they want to feel like they're going to keep getting that. She knows it.
It's the whole package.
Yep.
It's the whole thing.
And she's brilliant. She's just a joy to be around too.
I've never heard one thing that doesn't align with that. So I believe it.
Yeah.
I heard you also say, someone asked you a question once, and I was already planning on asking you this, but so I kind of already know your answer, but I want to talk about it. Someone's asked you if you had to pick between basically being a producer or a songwriter for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Songwriter.
Songwriter.
Yeah.
And from what you said was, Well, in the sense of, could I do it if I could do something long term and it could, basically pay the bills and do everything, be a songwriter.
Yeah.
And I totally get why people feel they have to wear other hats now. Not that saying, obviously, you like producing.
Yeah. Oh, I do, but it's work. It's I got to roll up my sleeves and go to work.
Well, it's interesting because I've talked to other people who do this, and they're like, well, yeah, because we're kind of in a situation where, yes, we're songwriters, but we know we can produce. But producing it's a check. It's no matter if the song becomes a hit or not, I get paid.
Yeah.
Versus songwriting, it's not quite like
it's a lottery ticket. We're pulling a lottery ticket every day in some ways.
And now I actually don't know this answer. This is weird because I kind of feel like I've learned a lot over the years about the industry. But if a song does really well, if you're the producer, do you also get paid more, or do you?
Do.
Okay.
You do. If it's a radio hit, you do. We have sound exchange, and that helps. And we don't have mechanicals like we used to. We're used to get paid once the album was recouped. You get back paid for every record sold up into that point. But now it's. And even Sound Exchange is an anomaly to me, and I have friends who actually work there, and I really need to go pick their brain to go, where does this money come from? But I'm just glad it comes. And so I'm not as much on the legal side of it as I should be, I guess. But I know that production in a lot of senses wouldn't be still worth it if we didn't have Sound Exchange. It wouldn't be, because it's more about, you've got somebody saying, hey, go build me a nice looking house, and that's what you're doing when you're doing production work.
That's a great way to put it.
And it's contract labor. It is. It's that way. And I feel like most producers now don't have the, at least it's not always that way. You have a window to the song funnel, but usually we want you to produce this record. Here are the songs. Mm-hmm. You have very little input sometimes of what that is. And sometimes some mornings I've been sitting at my kitchen table just wanting to make another pot of coffee because I don't want to go work on this song because I don't believe in it, but I know I have to. That's really
interesting. Okay.
I go, this is not going to move the needle for this artist, but all that to be said is I've been wrong about that sometimes too. So you get to go, well, I got to still go make a pretty house for somebody.
Do you vocalize that ever to the artist?
Sometimes, and usually the artist will be the first one to vocalize it to you. Usually the artist and producer are on the same page, but you're working with someone else's dime, and they're feeling confident this is a hit song, so you got to go make it go. And that's part of the process.
That's true. I never thought about it that way.
And I think you have to, as a producer these days, you have to realize who you're working for. Yes, you're working for the artist, but you're also working for the label. They've entrusted this budget, and they have a goal in mind too. So you have to kind of be able to go and be a psychologist sometimes to the artist to go, hey, think about it this way. Mm-hmm. This is worth it. The cream's going to rise to the top, and usually that part of it does not fail. The right songs usually do rise to the top, and they go, yeah, that's going to be the single or whatever. But you still got to go make them all sound like they could be hit records. That's what you're paid to do.
Well, and people also come to you to do something because they trust you as well. And I think that the faster we all learn that it takes a village, and it's okay that, I actually prefer, because if you're the artist, you're kind of really in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like sometimes you can't see the truth. And so I think it'd be nice to have somebody, especially your producer, which I think it's a marriage. That's a relationship for someone to have an opinion, and you can either take it with a grain of salt or trust them and kind of, again, ebb and flow with each other.
Absolutely. I think that's part of I've been in those situations too, where the artist has been kind of thrust into, you being the producer, and they don't know you that well. I always prefer to really try to spend a lot of time with them and kind of say like, hey, what do you want out of this record? And let's really know. I'm going to stand up and tell you when I think something should be otherwise if we have a disagreement, and we'll try to find the compromise of what that is. But in the end, sometimes you're thrust in those situations and you go, well, I'm pleasing two masters, and you got a label head calling you going, well, I don't want it that way. Well, the artist does. So now it goes to you going to have to tell the artist you don't want it that way. And that puts you as a producer. You're always the man that's the go-between. So
have you ever said no to doing a job?
Oh, yes. Many times.
Okay. All right.
And not because, and sometimes I would say, for the artist's benefit.
Sure.
If I didn't, because I don't think I'm the guy for this. Mm-hmm. I don't think I'm going to help you do what you need to do. And that part of it sometimes is tough to do because they can be big artists that are going to go on and make a lot of money, and you can see and smell that coming, but you go, I think I'm going to screw this up. I'm not going to be the right guy for this, and I've had to tell label guys that and had that very conversation where I go, well, I don't think I'm the right person for this. And then I've watched them go on and get with a Dan Huff or somebody like that and have big old hit records. And I go, well, see, I did them a favor. they got the right guy. I wouldn't have been the right guy.
Are there any that you have regretted?
Yes. Yes. I don't want to name names.
No, you don't have. But I figured.
Yes, I have. But also when I'm a writer too. I've always been blessed to be signed by a publishing company, and those people's opinions come in play too when you take time to do a project. It's like, you're working with a team of folks. You go, hey, I've been called to do this record. It's probably going to mean I'm going to have to wipe my calendar for the next month.
That's true.
And so they'll weigh in and go, I don't think you should do that. Or if you really want to go do it, then go do it. But their opinions matter too. And you got to think about all that, because my first priority is to really try to honor my commitment that I've made with the publisher and try to do the best I can to give them some ammo to go out there and get us some songs on the radio.
Yeah. So back to songwriting. I know that songwriting, I think you and I would both agree, is the process of it and the what's being produced today has changed a lot from what it used to be. Uh-huh. Why do you think that is? The method of madness has changed a bit.
Me and a lot of my buddies that write together, often we talk about this a lot, and a lot of us have been doing this for 20, 30, 40 years, and we've had to learn to write songs for a lot of different commercial movements in the industry. And so you're constantly doing that. And I do feel like it's interesting right now. I feel like there's more of a premium put on things that just feel emotionally jarring than are crafted and cleverly written. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's actually, I think, kind of good. You don't see a lot of funny songs working on the radio as much anymore.
No, and they were I don't know if this is funny, but I guess I know you've written a song with the Warren Brothers, but Red Solo Cup, it's more funny. Country Girl Shake It For Me, a little bit more funny, cheeky. Okay.
Yeah, and it's a lot of that stuff is not working as much right now. It doesn't seem. And so, but what you do see working is with the Jelly Roll stuff. They're really kind of hitting more emotional elements that really are more just what we would have said in the 90s. Well, that's not really a song. That's just an emotional concept, and we're going to write we can write something to that. But I feel that back to your original question, which was
why
do you feel like it's changed? I just feel like it's trends and times, and I feel like we're in a soundbite world where if the emotional element of the song is what's impactful, that's going to be the 30-second soundbite that's going to show up on TikTok and all that. And it's not necessarily the entire 3-minute song that matters. Is there one moment in the song that really says something that's powerful? And I think that can be enough to hang it on these days.
Absolutely. But just because I personally believe, in my opinion, there's a lack of storytelling in some of the songs, do you think that the community itself is going to try and bring that back, since it all starts with a song and it's a story? Country music was based on storytelling. Yeah.
Man, I hope so. It's one of those things where you just never know where it's going to go. I scratch my head sometimes, and you're writing for what you think is now, and I don't think that's usually ever a good idea unless you have access to an artist that you know what they specifically want for right this moment. And the other times you got to take those risks when a big idea walks in and just try to go, well, I'm going to craft this like a 90s country song and write it the best way we can, and hopefully they'll get cut. And they do sometimes. We look at those these days as unicorns. They're not the everyday occurrence. We'd rather have the artist in the room and go, hey, here's an idea we have. How can we craft this to where it fits to something you want to say?
Well, speaking of that, of saying the artist in the room, do you enjoy that, or would you prefer songwriters getting rooms together and they just write good music?
I like both. I like art, but I also am motivated by making a living, and I've got 4 kids to send to college, and so I feel like all writers, when they have the opportunity for a big artist to write with them and all that stuff, they rise to the occasion. If there's a great idea in the room, they'll write it good. And most of the time, those songs will get cut. And I feel like we all, I'm 50 years old now. I've been doing this for 33 years. My window of opportunity is slowly but surely dwindling down. And so I look at it as I'd like to take the best swings and the best shots that I have. And that's not to say that getting in the room with 3 veteran songwriters, and I think out of osmosis, we all do this anyway as songwriters. We gravitate towards guys we know that we have a good rapport with and know we have a like-minded song sense. And when you bring them a good idea, when you know you have a really, really strong idea, you want to entrust it to folks that you know it's not going to go the wrong direction. And I think that what happens a lot these days, and since COVID, a lot of veteran writers will get together, and what we're really trying to do is think about the artists that we know that we have access to, the artists that we know we're going to write with, and we go, this idea could be great for Lainey, or this idea could be great for so-and-so. And then we may try not to put it to where we're trying to write the song, but we try to get it going in a direction where we feel like that groove or that vibe would fit for Lainey. And then Lainey will walk in and she'll go, yeah, but I would not say it this way. I would say it this way. She would spin it to where it fits her brand. And that goes with all artists. They know who they're singing to and they know what they want to say. Our job is they don't have time to sit and think of song ideas like we do. That's not what they're doing every day. They're doing interviews. They're pulled 90 miles an hour in 90 different directions. And I think they need us to hopefully be there with something that they go, yep, I want to say that. And so that's what we're always mining for and digging for. And
has there ever been a moment over the last maybe like 10 years or so that you've ever felt pushed out because of the new wave of things?
No, I always kind of see myself as a chameleon, to just kind of, I don't study the market like I used to, only because I'm older and I've got other things that keep me busy. But I feel like that you do have to be willing to change and understand that it's going to change, and that if you're in the business of getting commercial songs recorded, then you're going to have to be willing to change. And some writers can do that, and some just don't want to do it. And there may be a point in time where I don't want to do it, but I'm not there yet. I'm still fortunate enough to have a lot of guys around me that pick up the slack when I'm having to comp 8 vocals because I'm the track guy in the room that day. They're bringing great ideas. They're at home mining great ideas, and they're showing up and going, I got this. And I go, okay, that's great for Scotty, or that's great for Lainey, or that's great for this. Let's try to get something going on those.
Yeah.
And that helps me. And I think understanding what your skill set is and what the guys you surround yourself with, or other girl writers that you know you're going to be working with, you go, she'd be great. Parker Welling would be great for this. She knows how to say this the right way. You know what I'm saying? And trying to write a great female song sometimes when you got a bunch of testosterone in the room is not always the right way to go about it.
So you mentioned change, and this often comes up in the show quite a bit because I love to get people's answers on this. When it comes to change in this industry, what's a piece of the change that you like and a piece of the change you do not like?
I like that we have gotten back to a point in the industry right now where the production is not all the same. It is very, there's a lot of different avenues that we can take things in. I think that's helpful. Getting back to where it's not so camp-based around the artist and the songs, so that the quality of the songs will go up. And for artists to, I get it. I mean, it's like I said, it's a knee-jerk reaction where there's not as much money being generated in the streaming side for the artists and publishers these days. So it kind of has to be, well, let's try to get as many as we can all on this one record so that we can make up the difference of what one great song would have done for us in the past.
That's really funny because I have noticed quite a bit of that. Like, I mean, not just to call somebody out, but like if you look at, say, like the credits on like a Morgan Wallen record,
yeah, you can see a lot of the same writers.
Names, right? Over and over and over again. And it's like, of course, you find your people that you blend well with and whatever. But I also get it from that aspect of the side. It's like, well, we got to somehow make up for the fact that if something isn't a big hit.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've at least got the numbers to bring it home, and So that part of it I wish would change. I wish that we could get back to a more, it seems like in the 90s when we wrote songs, if we wrote a great song, it was rare that I think I ever missed when I'd write a really great song. I'd go, this is going to get cut, and it would. And now you may have where you write a great song and it may sit somewhere for a year or two, and before the right person just hears it and it gets played for the right person, or the right artist comes along the way you go, man. And they usually will fall in love with the song because they know they couldn't have written that, and then they fall in love with it, and then they want to cut it.
Yeah.
And like I said, those are unicorns more than they're the exception, not the rule these days.
Where do you think a lot of those great songs are that just never got
I think that every publishing company in town has a mountain of them, and it's getting back to a point where I think you have to have the creatives from the top on the label side championing for those songs.
Absolutely.
And also I think we've come to a point where a lot of TikTok artists that have blown up and they get deals but they haven't paid their dues in a certain sense of, like, Lainey paid her dues. She was here for a long time grinding it out, and during COVID she made the most of that time when everybody was just on their phones, and her social media was so compelling and so self-deprecating at the same time and entertaining, and she nobody knows that she's been writing her guts out for 10 years, and here doing this. And so it's like we need to get back to the part where we're artist building and not just artist manufacturing. And that's a hard thing to say, because some people they really are ready for it, and it's hard to know who.
A lot of them aren't.
Yeah, and it's like you stick them out there and they've never played with a band. They don't know how to control those personalities. Yeah. It's a tough thing to ask them to do. And they just know, well, I'm successful and I just got a big record deal, so I know better. But it's like, no, you need wisdom. You need some counsel on the other side of it that you trust. They need to be able to trust that when someone's telling them something, that it's a truth and not just, hey, I'm trying to control you. It's not that. It's like, man, there are some things that are just tried and true wisdom in this business that still hold up, I think.
Oh, and there's something to be said about a slow rise to the top creates a long-lasting career.
Yeah.
It's like something that comes to you so quickly can leave just as quickly.
Absolutely.
And most of the time does.
Yep.
So I think it would be in a lot of newer artists' benefit to listen to, people who have been around the block a time or two.
Yeah.
Because they've been here. They know. Mm-hmm. I want to go back to your relationship with Brian White. Uh-huh. I would love to know, to give me just a picture of how you guys met, how you started writing together, that first #1 hit you had.
Yeah. Let's see, Brian's still a dear friend of mine. Our kids were growing up together in the same school system. We met when I was 18. I was in a band at that time called Pearl River, and Brian was just moving to town. Billy Joe Walker Jr. was cutting some sides on him. And I met him through a plugger through Glen Campbell Music, which is where I was signed to originally when I first came to town. And Audie Teeter was his name, was the plugger, and he introduced me and Brian. We met at the Charlie Daniels Jam. They used to have it at the Starwood Amphitheater back in the 90s. And we just kind of hit it off and realized we had we came from different backgrounds. Brian came from very much more Steve Wariner and country, and his mom's a great R&B singer, so he came from a R&B background, and we realized though that we had a lot of similar pulls in music towards what we liked, what we thought was good, and we just hit it off. And then we ended up I think we were renting an apartment off of Murfreesboro Road back in the day, and then that soon led to meeting a guy named Scott Emmerich, who's another great songwriter, wrote all those Toby Keith hits. We all three of us were roommates together. And that chunk of time from like 92 to 95 or something like that. And then we basically was only a place to come in and wash clothes because we were gone on the road 150 days out of the year. So we were always just together. And we all really had we loved Steve Wariner, we loved Mac McAnally, and all we'd do is stay up all night when we were home and learn Mac McAnally songs and sing a 3-part harmony. We just really were sold out to music. We did not have any other interest. It was just music. I had a guitar in my hand 24 hours a day, and we were making up stuff, and recording on 4 tracks and just cutting our teeth.
So tell me about writing So Much for Pretending.
That song was started, I think, on the road. We actually got that line, that original line came out of a Sheryl Crow song, that So Much for Pretending. It was a line in that, I can't remember what song it was of hers, but we thought that would be a cool idea for a song. And we were writing back then a lot with John Tiro, who was another great kind of melodic. You kind of gravitate towards the people. We were really into the more melodic country and the modulations and really sophisticated chord changes, and we enjoyed all that because that was the pop music and the country music that we loved, the Ronnie Millsaps and Steve Warners of the world. And so we started that song on the road, and then got with John. I think we finished that song actually on Halloween night. We were literally writing the bridge or writing the finishing that song while we were handing out trick-or-treat candy at a house we had over in Creve Hall somewhere.
So it's almost the anniversary.
Yeah, almost the anniversary of when we finished it. And I remember that we cut that demo. At that point, we had moved out of apartments and we were renting houses, and we had built a little studio in our place, and a little ADAT studio, and we had cut that demo, and we went in and cut the record, and Kyle and his son Jason, they just took the vocals that we had recorded, and that's what you hear on the record. They just lifted them off of our ADATs and put them on their record. Yeah, so it's fun.
Did that song change your life?
It did, and because it kind of validated. We had a hit with "Look at Me Now," which was his first kind of hit, and then, but it validated that we were, man, I think I can do this. But at that point, you still go. Like Craig, I think Craig Wiseman told me one time, because if you have one, you go, oh, that's not a validation. You still need 2 to get there, and then you go, okay, maybe I do have something where I can do this in a repeated process. And but it was a great time because we were young and out there on the road playing for thousands of people, and we thought we had the whole world figured out. But of course, you learn real quick that the wheels can come off, and you can be right back to square one. I mean, it's the music business.
Sure.
The roller coaster.
What would you say, out of the songs that have been recorded, what is your favorite?
Let me see.
Is that like picking a favorite child?
No.
Not the same.
It's awful the way we think about it. They all are, I'm trying to think of what I would. There's some that I have on the one that we have on this Scotty McCreery record that's out right now called "No Country for Old Men." That's one of my favorites, and one that me and Monty and Randy Montana wrote recently. Well, it was actually about 2 years ago, but I think Riley Green just cut it. It's not out yet, but that's one of mine. It's called "One to Willie," and those are probably my two favorites.
What would you say is your biggest career high?
Oh, now this will be funny. There was two moments that were career highs for me. The first one was getting to meet Quincy Jones in the bathroom at the Grammys.
Okay, well, that's fun. Okay, how was that like?
Well, we were there because Brian and I had played on the Steve Warner song that was nominated for a Grammy, and so we go to New York, and we're there, and we're in the bathroom, and Brian was a huge Michael Jackson fan.
Oh, ditto.
And so we're in the bathroom, standing at the urinals, and I'm in the middle one, Quincy's on my right, and Brian's to my left, and he's nudging me. That's Quincy Jones. And Quincy must have heard him. He goes, "How you gentlemen doing?" And he talked to us and was hilarious. We just sat there and had a conversation. And y'all up for any awards tonight? Yes, sir. I hope y'all win. It was just, that was a fun highlight moment. And the other one would be singing on a Mac McAnally record.
Okay.
I got called in to sing harmony on one of his songs. And Mac's a hero of mine and a great human and a great guy. And those are high bars for me because we look at it at some point, you go, man, I'm supposed to go write good songs. I'm supposed to make great records. I've been doing this for a long time, but getting to do it with your heroes and when they don't disappoint you is a joy and a gratuitous joy, I should say.
I hate to bring the mood down, but we talk about career highs, but I think it's also important to talk about your lows.
Lows.
What do you think would be a top low?
Top low. Let's see. I ran a publishing company for 4 years. It wasn't that.
Oh my God.
The experience was it was a great learning experience. But I also realized that that's not what I needed to be doing. It was a young company, and it was one of those situations where we didn't really have a lot of catalog to start with, and so I really focused all my energies on just trying to create the catalog when I really needed to be out pimping the catalog instead of trying to create one. And so yeah, you learn a lot, but that was a time where I realized, this is not really what I want to be doing. I don't want to do this.
Okay.
I like, and then I thought I was a good publisher at the time, and then I worked with folks like Alicia Pruitt and Frank Rogers and some of the other folks, and I go, I was a terrible publisher. I was terrible.
How long did it last? 4 years?
Yeah, 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And ultimately, why did you shut it down? Because you realized it wasn't something that you wanted to be doing, or was it doing badly?
I got really, it kind of happened in a place where I got super busy and was having a lot of success in the production world right then. And it was just one of those things where I needed to exit and move on and focus on those things, and they needed to make a change and move to something else. But I realized at that point that, man, on the other side of the glass was where I needed to be. On the strictly creative is what I thrive on and what I still enjoy the most to this day.
Drink to That All Night.
Okay.
I want to talk about that one.
Okay.
That's a fun song. And you wrote that with the Warren Brothers, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And Lance Miller. And it was Lance's idea. Well, he had gotten it from, do you know Thompson Square folks? Kiefer Thompson?
Yeah.
I think that they were hanging out at Losers or something the night before, and somebody had said something, and Kiefer actually said, I can drink to that all night, or whatever, and Lance just got his phone out and wrote that title down. And then,
oh, that's funny.
And then he had us the next day, and it was, like all songs with the Warren Brothers, it's just like winding up the monkey and letting it go, And
goodness.
And we had a blast writing it, and then I remember going back, because I couldn't wait to demo it, and I just kind of started working on the demo, and I really put the screws to it because I really the melody was so engaging, and I just felt like a hit.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I also want to talk about all your success with Randy Houser.
Okay.
I mean, especially on the production side, it's incredible. Talk about the making of that album, and also what do you think the magic was, like the special sauce that created so much success out of that?
Well, I mean, going back, I wrote for Windswept Publishing in the early 2000s. When I came off the road with Brian and was focusing, hey man, I got this opportunity. I think I'm just going to come off the road and really just focus on writing full time. And it was. I'd been there for a couple of years, and Randy's manager at the time, great human being, Ken Rainey, had reached out to me about, how would you hear this guy sing, and brought Randy up here, and I took Randy over there, and Steve Markland and Cliff Aldridge at the time fell in love with Randy and signed him over there at Windswept, and then we started working. It took us about 3 years to really we were playing lots of shows here in Nashville. I was playing guitar for him and had a great band, and we were packing out 12th and Porter. It was a fun time in the early 2000s here, and it was just a blast. And then I think Stroud finally came to a show and said, hey, I want to sign him. And Stroud was the first one to give me a full-on shot and say, hey, Derek, you're going to produce this with me, and I'm just here to make sure we keep it in the sidelines, and y'all do what you do. I don't want to change much about all that. And it was great. He was a great creative partner. He's not the kind of guy that would step on your toes and any of that stuff. He just wanted you to do what you wanted to do, but he'd tell you if it was going too far the wrong direction. And that's kind of how Randy and I worked together. Well, we got a record deal and it didn't happen. And they, like a lot of times, different label heads change, and Stroud got the axe, and if you're one of his acts, then you get that product gets shelved. And then he went over to Universal South, I think it was at that time, and then they had a couple of hits on him there. But then he got out of that deal, and he called me. He goes like, "Dude, you and I never got to make the record we were supposed to make." And he goes, "Can we get in the studio and cut 2 or 3 things?" So we did. We went to my place. He sent me like 10 or 15 songs, and we picked 3 out of the batch. Like a Cowboy was in that batch, and a couple other things. We may have wrote a couple, 2 to kind of throw in there, but then we cut the songs at my house, at my studio, and that was what inevitably got him the deal at Broken Bow.
Okay.
And Benny went in to meet with Benny, and Benny's like, "Well, yeah, we want you to produce this," and I was like, "Well, okay," and we did. But Benny had some great songs stashed away. He had Our Country Fields, one of the first song meetings we had. He had that. And Goodnight Kiss, I think Randy wrote with Jason Sellers along the way. And we already had like a Cowboy. They just upgraded that one. And Running Out of Moonlight came as a last minute thing. I think Dallas Davidson sent it to Randy the night before we were going in the studio. And Randy sent it to me. I was like, dude, this is way better than anything we've got. So this is a hit. And I said, this is
That's a nice
one.
last minute surprise.
And but at the time we didn't know this. That song was on hold for Scotty McCreery.
Oh no!
Scotty was going in to cut it, but we cut it the next day. And I think Dallas had to get in a shouting match with the folks over at Universal at the time. But it ended up being a big record for Randy. And as far as the magic was, we went back to, we used all the 90s A-Team guys on that record. It was Michael Rhodes, Steve Nathan, Lainey Wilson, who'd been a dear friend of mine, B. James Lowry. The band was strictly built on, I knew that things were moving more in the programming direction at the time. It was just starting to happen. And so I thought, man, if we stick these great A-Team musicians from the 90s and let them just do their things, they don't need a producer. They're going to play the song the right way. And that's what they did. And we cut that record very, very fast. It was, most of those songs were 3 songs in a session. So 1 song an hour.
Wow.
Just burning through them as quick as we could. And then I'd take them back and just carve on them at my place. And great, it was a great group of songs. And Randy's got a great voice. He could sing the phone book and make it compelling. But, it was just the right kind of commercial vein for him. And kudos to Benny for that. And kudos to finding a few more to make it great along the way,
Yeah, I mean, what it was. There's 4 songs that are in the top 5, and there were 3 number ones on it as well.
It was a good chunk. And I also say Casey Wood was the engineer who mixed that stuff. And Casey is a dear friend. We still work together a lot today. And he really made those records, I think, at that time, because not a lot of people were using him. He gave them a unique sonic stamp. So I can't say enough about Casey. He's one of the best to do it.
When it comes to an artist working with you as a producer or co-writers in a room with you, how do you think people describe you?
I'm amenable. I mean, I will try some crazy ideas if they want to do it. I may voice my opinion and go, man, I think that's I'm talking, my wife's a school teacher, of elementary school teacher, so I try to just keep it dumbed down as much as I can. I was like going, I don't think that's a capital letter problem. If we get in the weeds over something that's about a guitar sound or a snare sound or something, that stuff is, I see myself as more of does the energy and of the song marry up with the emotional elements of the song, and trying to really just make it sound good and hit all the right triggers at the right moments in the song dynamically. And I feel like they would all say that I will indulge them. I will go there, but I will tell them when I think we're wasting the time. And sometimes they'll go, yep, you're right, this is not getting any better. And I'm like, okay, well, let's move on, because we're good. We don't need to overthink this, dude.
Yeah. Okay. So easygoing would probably be a good. Do you think you're easygoing?
I think so. I think I am. What do you think? You've only spent
I think so. I mean, it's only been 48 minutes.
Yeah. All right.
What would you say, getting into this career, now that you've been here, what is something that you didn't expect?
I didn't expect it to change as much as it has. I really did not. I mean, I think you come here with kind of your vision of what you want to do and what you want to accomplish. And I think along the way, I've had to learn to change my direction several times. I mean, and that was a part that I never expected to have to do. I thought once I got here and started really writing with real writers, I began, okay, well, there's a craft to this. I understand there's nuance. Yes, there needs to be a great idea, but I learned from Jim Weatherly and Greg Wiseman and those guys, man, they really knew how to sum something up and with an economy of words and great syntax and all that, and get it done. And I just had to learn how to write songs for 4 different styles of music, and and that part of it's not always easy, and you've got to be willing to go, okay, well, this is where it's going, man. So I've got to be able to switch gears, and I've got to go listen to some of this stuff, even though I may not like it. If I can understand how to commercialize it, then I can do it. Like my kids listen to Zach Bryan all the time. I'm not a fan of Zach Bryan. I don't understand it. And if I had to learn how to commercialize that, I don't know that I could do it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not necessarily, I think he's a great artist. I just don't think it's something that I could do.
No, it makes sense. Like, well, first of all, music is subjective. It's not like,
exactly.
It will find a home where it's meant to be. You don't have to be a fan of everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, that's just ridiculous.
But same thing. If they were going to say, "Well, Zach Bryan, you want Derek George to produce your record?" I'd be like, "Dude, I'm not going to be the guy.
Yeah,
I'm gonna hold you back. You need to do what you're already doing. You know,
because it's working for a lot of people.
Yeah,
so I guess
right.
like it's just
that's not that wouldn't I would be the first one to fire myself and go, no man. Even if we hit it off and sit there and go, like, this is great, we're having fun. I'd be like, don't you do not want me. I'd make it way too slick, dude. It would make it way too commercial sounding. So
you know what though, I gravitate towards commercial sounding, so I completely get that. Because I agree when the Zach Bryan thing came out, I was just like, I tried listening to the album over and over again, and I'm like, I get that. I'm just not the audience for it, and it just makes sense. I'm like, I'm the person that likes something that's very commercialized, and I guess I'm just not it. Like I'm not, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
That's all right.
When it comes to this industry, I love talking about myths too. What do you think is a myth that ended up being true, and a myth that ended up actually just being a myth?
A myth. I'd say this is a myth. That watch out for every manager or somebody that comes along because they're out to screw you.
Okay.
That part of it, I don't think, I've never seen that. At least it never has. And obviously that some people, I'm sure they have been, burned and done the wrong way. But I've always been blessed to be around some folks that had my best interest in mind. And most of the time, even if I didn't understand the business aspect of why we were doing something that we were doing, they were right. And so in my experience, that part of it was a myth. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen.
Sure.
I'm sure it does, but it's not the norm. I think a lot of people come here with their guard up, and
everyone's out to get you.
Yeah, and it's a sense of, man, you might be, by wearing your heart on your sleeve and showing that your guard's up, you might be keeping yourself from getting some opportunities that you may not have.
Sure. Because
they'll go, this it's too much to deal with. I want to move on. It's not going to be an easy task. If I'm having to convince them, sell myself on my value, then it's probably not worth me continuing to do it.
Yeah.
With them.
Okay, so what about a myth that ended up being true?
A myth that ended up being true. Well, on a positive note, I would say that good songs do find their way. A really great written song, sooner or later, will find a home and find its way out there. I haven't given up hope in that, or else I wouldn't still be doing it every day.
True.
And so I'd say that's a myth that I think is true.
I like that. I like a positive one.
Yeah.
What do you think is, other than, obviously we've talked about your publishing days, but what do you think other than that has been your biggest challenge that you've overcome?
Man, when I first came to town and we were cutting our first record in Pearl River, the band I was in, we didn't get to play or sing on that record except for the lead singer. He was the only one. It was all done by studio musicians and studio singers. And I think the biggest challenge that I felt like, there was two ways to look at it. I realized in the first 5 minutes of watching those talented musicians that I need to get better. And and those first few years, I was sold out to it, and that's all I did was play and learn. And the session players were so wonderful and great, teaching you about how to get the right sounds and teaching me. I remember one time we were cutting the first record, and Brent Rowan was the guitar player, and Brent's one of the best to ever do it. And I asked Brent, I was like, man, what are you thinking about when you're coming up with these parts on the fly? And he goes, man, the first thing I do is listen to the words. And that dictates the type of personality I need to have when I play. And it made so much sense to me. And it's been invaluable advice, because even when I'm writing a fun song, then I want the parts to be quirky. If I'm writing a serious song, I want the parts to be subdued and engaging emotionally.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of nuance that in the 90s that the musicianship had. When I feel like we kind of got, during the Bro Country era, we kind of got into this just like, man, everything's got to be over the top and gratuitous and lots of bells and whistles and swooshes and things to, these transitions and all this kind of stuff. And And I see it now that we're kind of settling back into more of, hey, let's just, less is more. Let's just get the song across to people.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So I think learning and having a teachable spirit and being able to sit back and go, man, I can look at this as, screw these guys, I'm good enough to do this and I should be playing on these records. It's like, no, when you watch them do their thing one time, it was always just humbling to me, and it was time to go to the woodshed and get better. Same thing with writing, I mean, I've been writing for 20 years before I ever wrote with Craig Wiseman, and I knew one day we'll write with him, I was like, my God, this man is working on a whole nother level lyrically than I'm even seeing, but sitting there watching him work and learning and understanding, that part of it is every day still. You get with a new person and you see how they figure out a way out of the maze, and you go, oh, that's I'm putting that in my bag of tricks now because I see what they did to get out of this. And you took it away and used it the next time.
Do you find that younger songwriters that are kind of on the up have the same type of respect the way you're talking about of Craig? Because I've sat down with a few people that have said, I don't feel that. Like, I feel like they're kind of almost stuck in this way. Like, this is we're the new it things right now, and we have nothing to learn from you. Have you experienced that at all?
I have. I see it as, man, I don't know. When I came to Nashville, I already knew the names of a lot of these great songwriters. And even at 18, I was doing my homework. And even now, when I'm writing with an artist that I don't know, if it's me and Monty or me and Lynn Hutton or any of those guys, we'll do our homework, and we want to try to be respectful of at least knowing what kind of direction we're heading in that day, the writer. But I have some of them come in and they'll go, you'll make a reference of something, and they'll go, I don't even know what that means. And I feel like that's where we really, I don't know how to explain it, in the sense, maybe it's just that they haven't done the research on all the music we had. I mean, most of those folks that I work with on a daily basis were music lovers first, and they could probably sit down. Now, I couldn't sit down and play you every Keith Whitley song. I could strum along with you, but guys that I work with, a lot of them could. And they know, and they could tell you who wrote them and all that stuff. And at one point, I could have told you by listening to every record on the radio. I could have told you that's Brent Mason, that's Brent Rowan, I could have named the entire band to you just by listening to it.
Yeah.
Because we were that steeped in it. But now it's just a different thing, and I don't know that I think they just think we're good because they gave me a publishing deal and I had a hit song on something. Well, man, it's one thing to have a hit song, but that money spends fast, especially when you get some kids in your life. You got to do it again and again and again.
And because, this world is ever changing, what is a piece of advice you would give to a new songwriter?
Be open-minded, learn to wear a lot of hats, because you're probably going to have to. I mean, you need to know something about the recording process as you go. Not all guys, that's not necessarily for all of them, but I think it's a good tool to have in your toolbox. Being able to somewhat make a decent work tape. And because we're in a time where, it's a track built world, and I feel, especially on the songwriting world, it's not as much demo. You're not demoing the songs with live players as much as we used to. Some of that's out of necessity, and some of it's, I just think, inefficient. It would be much better to go back to the other way. But and I think the songs would benefit from it too, because you're getting ideas from 7 or 8 people instead of just what you have to offer.
Sure.
So I would be open-minded about the ideas and be humble. I mean, come in and go, man, these guys have done this repeatedly. I can benefit from learning something,
I agree.
Yeah.
What do you think is a personality trait that all songwriters have?
I think at least all the ones that I write with on a regular basis, there is a psychological aspect to what they bring to the table. And a lot of them are well read. They read a lot, and they read about a lot of things. A good trait, I mean, man, just getting up and doing the work, man. The discipline of it. I mean, I've watched super, super talented people throughout the last 30 years burn out because they got it became more important to them to have a good time or whatever along the way and stuff like that. And they could have been more. And just showing up and doing the work and then trying to be timely with doing the work. And I think that part of it is important. And I do, for the most part, feel like the younger crop of writers that I do see, they do have that part of it. And they show up and do the work. They want to be there. They want to write the songs. And I've always never been one to go out and schmooze and do all that kind of stuff. I'm a homebody. I stay at home and work out of my house every day. But I get up and do the work. If I know I got to comp 3 vocals, I'm going to get up and go comp 3 vocals. And then my write's going to show up at 11 and we're going to write another one. And I may have 3 more vocals to comp by the end of the day, and then just knowing that that's going to be, that's the Groundhog Day, and you got to go live it and do it.
Are you still finding a lot of happiness in this career?
I am. I do. I mean, I'm starting to diversify my the way I do it, and like I'm dabbling in management and some of those other things now, and starting to kind of move into, because I just feel like philosophically, as a producer, if you're working with artists on a daily basis, you're kind of doing some of it anyway, and trying to help manage their expectations of what's. It's like, there's what you want, and then there's what they want, and then there's what we can probably do, and trying to really figure those things out. You realize that you spend a lot of time talking with these guys, and they'll come over and they're going to sing for 2 hours, and then you're going to spend there 2 more hours just talking about whatever they want to bitch about, and that's the truth. I mean, you do, and you kind of, some of it's like keeping their spirits to a place, because I mean, it's a tough business, and with the charts moving as slow as they do now. Even with an artist on an upward trajectory, man, it could be a year on one single that they're sitting there going, man, I don't know. And then they're tired of playing that song and want to move on to something else, usually before the song's peaked. And so it's just managing expectations and those kind of things, I think, is part of the deal. So I do still get joy out of it. There's nothing still beats when someone has a great idea in the room and chasing that part of it down. Mm-hmm. But I think the older you get and the longer you do it, because you've written about more things throughout the years. I mean, there's not a subject you hadn't written about or tackled. You start to be harder on the ideas you choose to spend your time on. And I think that's, with my whole group of guys that I work with on a regular basis, we're all pretty hard on that. We don't want, because we know the workload that comes with it. If you write the song, okay, well, we spent 4 to 6 hours writing this song, or sometimes an hour if it's just falls out. But then there's the demo, there's the getting the artist back over to sing, the scheduling of all that. So by the time then if I'm the one who's built the track and played a lot of the instruments on it, then I got to let my ears rest for a day just so I can go spend 2 more hours mixing it. So there's all the workload part of it that you go, okay, well, you want to make sure you're doing it, spending your time wisely and trying to write smarter and not harder. I mean, that same old work adage, it really does come into play these days.
What would you say you're most excited about right now?
Man, we just wrote some great songs with Dylan Carmichael. And I've been trying to get those finished up so that he can play those for his people. And those are really great. I've been writing again with my buddy Chase Bryant, who's just a freaking phenomenal talent. And he's one of the best. And man, this record that Scotty McCreery has out right now, it's a great country record, and I hope that in time that it will show that the people will get a hold of it and really devour it and see. But I'm really proud of all the songs that I'm a part of on that record, and I think Frank Rogers made a great record. So man, I got a lot to be. I'm blessed and got a lot to be thankful about.
Absolutely. What would you say is a goal that you still want to achieve that you haven't yet?
I'd like to write a few more number ones before I die.
Not too bad.
I feel like production world, for me, I feel like after I'd produced my 5th number one, there was just something in my body that said, I'll be okay if I never produce another number one. I was okay. I felt like I had done, I knew I had, but I think it's more, the reason why I felt that way is that I knew that the roles and the value of a producer has changed so much. They've been devalued, in my opinion. They just, and so that's okay if I don't ever produce another number one again. I'm still making lots of records, but it's one of those things that it's not I don't feel like I need to prove anything to myself in that part. I think that's a goal. I'd like to. I think this management thing. I think I'd really like to make that work. To see if I really can do that.
Yeah.
Because I think it's the only aspect of the business that I really haven't ever had hands-on experience with. Everything else I've kind of done. So
You got a ton of ambition. That's pretty good. I mean, you want to wear all the
for
hats.
50 years old, I just want to get my kids through college.
So before we end every show, I always ask the guest the question that the last guest wanted me to ask, whoever my next guest was going to be.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you, what fills your cup up?
What fills my cup up? This may be a little metaphysical, but my faith fills my cup up the most still. I see my whole world is looked through from that lens, and I even see songwriting as my vocation that God put me here to do. And so that's what fills my cup up, is knowing that I'm not just doing it for some random reason. I feel like that I found my place. A lot of people struggle to find what that was. And I've been fortunate and blessed enough to know that that's what I was sitting here to do, is to make music. And I've never doubted that. And he's always had his hand on me and shown me the right way to go and put me in the right rooms with the right people and kept me humble when I needed to be humble and showed me a way out when the building was on fire, so I look at all that stuff and just go, my faith and my family. That's what fills my cup up.
Amen. Well, I want to ask you now, what would you like me to ask my next guest? You can't know who it is, and it could be about anything.
Golly, that's tough. I'm really on the spot here. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Dead air.
It could be music related or not.
Yeah.
Too.
If you weren't doing this, what else would you be doing?
Okay. Well, thank you, Derek.
Well, thank you.
I had
Tiffany.
a ton of fun. Thank you just so much for being. And again, I'm really sorry for your loss that you just went through.
well.
But thank you for being here and sharing your stories. It's meant a lot.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.